Yeah, so thanks so much. I'm Justin Fuhrer. I'm a science librarian at the University of Manitoba. Happy to present at this conference. Love attending every year. So this is Librarian in the Mirror, using reflection for professional and personal well-being. So my goal today is to share my experience with reflection so that you feel more comfortable reflecting yourself with the benefit of improved well-being. So I'm going to run through why you'd want to incorporate reflective practice, how reflection can increase well-being. I'll run through some models of reflective practice that you can use, and then review some methods of reflection if and when you start to reflect yourself. So over the course of the pandemic, it's been simultaneously empowering, but also stressful. So I'm an early career librarian, and I was very recently hired at my institution in a permanent position. But before this, it meant a lot of applications, some interviews. And on top of that, you're dealing with stress of isolation, which has been talked about in a few presentations I've seen at the conference so far, learning new roles throughout my library system, and providing childcare and working sometimes at the same time. So nowadays, I find I flip between the Ron Swanson on the left, who's very pleased with himself. Maybe he just ate a really big steak. And the Ron Swanson on the right, who's just burned off his prized mustache. And I move from these, back and forth, depending what's happening. And I found there's been a lot of highs and a lot of lows for myself over the past year, mainly due to the pandemic, but other factors as well. And this is a long way from where I was in 2019, when I was on a houseboat in BC, where the most stressful decision of the day was when to get in the hot tub. So do you ever discover an interest in something and think, it would be great to be able to get this into my work somehow? And that was me with reflective writing. So I started reflective writing over the course of the pandemic, about a year and a half ago, to make sense of all that was happening in my life. Not only did I personally reflect on work-related issues as a result of challenges related to the pandemic, but I've also started to present on reflective practice in teaching and research for a series of graduate student and faculty workshops that the University of Manitoba Libraries runs, working it into my job in that way. And I want to share my experience with reflection to show how accessible it is and how useful it can be so others can reflect themselves. I'm still trying to figure out how to incorporate disc golf, cycling, playing the drums, and hosting a radio show into my work, though. Maybe a future conference presentation. Okay, so I have a poll to gauge how familiar you are with self-reflection, just to get a sense of how you feel about reflection, and also so that you can see what the rest of the group is thinking and feeling. It's 2 questions. It's super quick. Let's just run it. I usually do this in my sessions too. Here's the link in the chat. So I'll just give you 1 minute to answer the first question, and then we'll switch to the next. Okay, so some people answering already. Nice, that's good. Okay, so, some people, sort of, sometimes there's some yeses, some nos, about even, not sure. Okay, I'll just switch to the next question here. Okay, this is actually really similar to Anya. When I think about practicing self-reflection, it makes me feel blank. Okay. Yes, there's a lot of, either cautiousness or a lot of tireds. There's one column, that's good, a lot of anxiousness. Okay, so yeah, just keep that in mind as we move forward here. Okay. Okay, so reflection and reflective practice is all about studying yourself to consider alternative actions and increasing your self-awareness. So the whole idea behind reflective practice is improvement, awareness, and development. So this is one of the reasons I started reflective writing and self-reflection in general. I mentioned earlier, I was isolated from my coworkers, dealing with childcare on top of work, and it was a lot, and it still is a lot in a lot of ways. So reflective writing gives me an outlet to make sense of the world, make sense of COVID, make sense of job searching, make sense of a lot of things. And it gives me a sense of calm, similar to the one response in the poll there, and empowers me to know what I'll do moving forward. And not to mention, I can share my writing with other people, which I also like. It makes for conversation and advice, and I find that also improves my well-being. So think about a time when you were troubled by something at work. How did it affect your well-being, and what did you do? And just keep that in mind as we move forward here. Okay, so I think of reflective practice as beneficial for 3 reasons. To understand why things happen the way they did, to make sense and place meaning on your experience, and then to plan and improve for the future. And you'll see this forms a model of reflective practice, which we'll talk about in just a couple of minutes. But how does reflection fit into your well-being, right? So Harrington and Lafredo, 2 professors of psychology at the University of Houston, Victoria, they found correlation between reflective practice, the insight you gain, and this corresponded to improved well-being. Self-reflection also allows for the potential resolution of professional and personal issues, increases self-awareness, which allows for greater confidence and control in your life. Yeah, there we go. Okay. Okay, so I won't read this entire passage, but the bolded part is what's really meaningful to me. So this is from Ethan Kross's excellent book, Chatter. He writes about our inner voice and how to manage it, why it matters. I think that's the subtitle. Kross writes that when processing a challenging experience, quote, time passes, which allows us to reflect on what we're feeling and thinking about in ways that often temper our emotion. And so it gets at this idea that time heals, but also the power of reflection, thinking about what happened, and it can be really beneficial. I also think by improving your librarian practice, you also improve well-being. I frame reflection in this way for grad students and faculty that come to my reflective practice sessions, and I think they apply to overall well-being for academic librarians as well. So you can establish your teaching, research, reference, relational styles. You can explore your power and positionality as a librarian. And most importantly for me, you create connection and build community with those you speak with. And I think it's important to remember reflection isn't just sitting in a room thinking about what happened. I'll talk about some ways you can engage yourself, but also engage others with the goal of self-assessment, reflection, right? Which you can use to incrementally improve your librarian practice. And personally, I think also your well-being and wellness. Okay, so we talked a lot about reflection in general and why it's important, but how do you go about reflecting? And I find it useful to look to models. There's lots to choose from. I've included 3 here. There's many more, but let's just look at these 3. So Graham Gibbs, he's a professor at Oxford and a learning development expert. His reflective cycle is extremely comprehensive compared to the others, but he has a 6-stage model. So it first focuses on describing what happened and how you felt during what happened. Then he gets you to evaluate, to make sense of what happened, analyzing why it's meaningful and to make sense of that situation. And then you conclude, right? And you come up with an action plan, which you can use to when you encounter similar scenarios in the future. Stephen Brookfield, he's the author of Becoming a Critically Reflective Teacher. So he comes at reflection from a teaching or instruction lens. So he uses 4 lenses in his reflection. You focus first on autobiography, then you look to your students, your colleagues, and then literature in your field. And so the lenses correspond with self-reflection, student feedback, peer assessments, and using scholarly literature. And I like to bring up Brookfield's 4 lenses because they introduce these other aspects to reflection that is beyond just self-reflection, right? So you're using other people to think about your experience. And I also really like Driscoll's what model. So it's super simple. It's based on these questions asked by Terry Borton in the 70s. So John Driscoll asks what, so what, now what? And I love how simple it is, and it gets at what we talked about before when you think about what happened, why it's meaningful, and what you'll do moving forward. Okay, so here's Driscoll's what model, and I really like this summary from the University of Cambridge Library. So they write, quote, firstly, we should describe what the situation or experience was to set it in context. This gives us a clear idea of what we're dealing with. We should then reflect on the experience by asking, so what? What did we learn as a result? Right? The final stage asks us to think about the action we will take as a result of this reflection. Will we change, try something new, or carry on as we are? And it's important to remember there might not be any changes, and you might feel like you're doing everything as you should. Here's Gibbs's reflective cycle, and I'll just pull up some example questions here. How much time do we have? Okay. For the description stage, you can think about what happened, right? You're just describing what happened. Feeling, what are your thoughts and feelings? Were you frustrated, disappointed, confused? For evaluation, you would think about what was good and bad about the experience, and where do the facts and your thoughts intersect, and how do they impact each other? For analysis, you're going to want to think about what sense can be made of this situation. And I also think this is a great place to bring in, if you're talking with someone else, to get their input on exactly what happened, right? Conclusion. Think about what else you could have done and what will be your focus to improve. And finally, your action plan, using what you came up with in your conclusion and based on your reflection. If this situation happened again, what would you do or what would you need? It's important to think about. Sometimes requires practical preparation in advance. Okay, so here's an example, which may or may not be true, right? So description, my 5-year-old son is having trouble sleeping because he thinks there's a ghost that lives under his bed. So this is challenging, not only because how it's affecting my son, but how it's affecting me and my hard-earned sleep and rest. For feeling, intellectually and practically, I know there isn't a ghost that I know of. Emotionally, though, I can relate to my son who's much younger than me, right? And I can understand he's scared of ghosts. Who isn't scared of ghosts? However, I'm very tired from waking up multiple times in the middle of the night to soothe my son back to sleep. So when I think about evaluation, my son's creativity, it's on full display. When he's describing the ghost under his bed, apparently it's a dinosaur ghost. However, my lack of sleep is starting to affect my work. It's also not good that my son is scared to go to sleep somewhere that's supposed to be a safe, happy place. So I've got to solve this issue. In terms of analysis, children will go through many stages of their life, amplified when they're young, right? Upon reflection, this is simply a stage he will outgrow, no longer thinking supernatural apparitions are present in his bedroom. Perhaps patience and understanding could help with this. And I also, okay, for conclusion, I don't think there's anything else I could have done to prevent my son from thinking about dinosaur ghosts, right? When this happens, practice patience and understanding and comfort my son. And so my action plan, this will happen again, most likely, whether it's something else my son's imagination conjured or from my 2-year-old daughter. But moving forward, I'll have more patience, appreciating my children's creativity, and understand this will likely pass in short order. So I'll be kinder to myself during these stages and try to take time for myself throughout another part of the day while he is in this stage. Okay, what time do we have? Okay, okay, I'll just skip this. I came up with an example using Gibbs again, right, based on job searching. I'm gonna leave you with the slides though, and you can read it on your own. It's very similar to the dinosaur ghost sort of thing, but just with job searching. Okay, so when I think of methods of reflection, I think of methods you do on your own, and I think of methods you do as a group. So individual methods includes things like journaling, reflective writing, which I'm a big fan of, simply taking time to think about your experiences, and also things like formal performance reviews. Group methods includes things like journal clubs, team meetings, communities of practice, which I'll note, CAPAL has quite a few available. Also, you can think about it in terms of cooperative inquiry. speaking with colleagues or friends, and also peer observation. So think about the Gibbs model again. You're not just describing what happened, you're analyzing and coming up with ways to improve for the future. And this is a key component of self-reflection and also reflective writing and of reflection in general, really. I don't want you to think about reflective writing as prescriptive. There's really no wrong way to do it. In terms of form, you can think about writing short or long form, something free-formed, or maybe a little more structured. You can also think about different types of writing, such as journaling, blogging, social media, right? Using a template, or even something like report writing, which you may do as part of your job or as part of your role. I love this quote from Christopher P. Long, Dean of the College of Arts and Letters at Michigan State University. So he writes, quote, "My daily writing practice opens a space for me to check in with myself, refine my ideas, and hold myself accountable to my core values," end quote. So this really gets at how Christopher comes at reflection. There's so much in this quote, right? Daily writing practice. So he's writing daily, it's part of his routine. He checks in with himself. He also thinks about ideas that he has, maybe reflects on those. And he also uses writing to hold himself accountable to core values. So he's identified core values that are important to him, important to his work, maybe his personal life, right? And he's checking in with himself, making sure that he's still living a life according to those core values. Okay, I have a reflective writing exercise. So this I usually run in my reflective practice sessions, but we don't quite have enough time, so I'm just gonna leave it with you. I will post the link in the chat here. It's also written there. Okay. Yeah, so you can think back on these models if you have time or if you even want to. But if you think it'd be beneficial, think back on the models we've looked at, especially think about the Gibbs and Driscolls models. And if you decide to do this, open up a text file or write in the exercise document or use a pen and paper, right? And practice writing very short reflective, practice writing a very short reflection using this exercise. So I really like to start things small when I'm trying something new. Low stakes is very important, and that's exactly what this is. So you can answer each bullet point just with a few sentences. So it's 9 sentences total, right? 2 sentences on what happened, 3 sentences on what did you learn, and 4 sentences on action, right? What would you change moving forward? So you can see, if you think about the Driscoll model, what, so what, now what? So I want to encourage you, integrate reflection into your daily life. Think of it as sort of a praxis, so a fancy word for saying integrating this philosophy of reflection that we talked about into daily practice. Don't think about it as a set exercise, something you have to do or feel you need to do, right? But just think about it more of a philosophy, working it into your life when it works for you. Okay, thanks for attending. I just have some references here. I'll post a link to my slides, and I believe they're available afterwards as well. And then I believe there's one more presentation, and then there's time for questions, or you can pop them in the Q&A as well. So thanks so much, everyone.